Enemy mech destroyed. Primary objective successful. Proceed to dust-off zone for extraction. Sensors indicate friendly dropship has entered atmosphere. ETA dropship 1 minute. Shutdown sequence initiated.
The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the guests or hosts, and not necessarily those of the advertisers, networks, platforms, or stations. Warning that the content of the show may not be suitable for all audiences, and that viewer discretion is advised. The show does not intend to provide medical, legal, or financial advice, and viewers or listeners should consult with a professional before making any decisions based on the information.
Welcome back, all you guys out there in Radio Land, to the Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live Show. We are broadcasting from 300 feet down in an abandoned nuclear missile silo somewhere lost deep in the post-apocalyptic wastelands of the Dakota Territories. And just today, high above us, we saw literally hordes of radioactive vampiric jackalopes, believe it or not, and they were running wild. They were glowing and looking for human flesh. That's okay. I'm joined, as always, by the paranormal crime fighting duo. Daisy and the Sundance Kid are working security in the silo tonight. And as always, there is a $10 cover charge and a 2-drink minimum. Please be kind to your waitress. And this has been an interesting week. I haven't had a lot of time this week to really delve into a lot of deep research. So we're going to sort of go back over some topics we've discussed in kind of a new light. A new piece of research did come to me this week, which really fits well into the puzzle pieces that I've been sort of theoretically fashioning together to support the idea that there is a disincarnate being that's making its home at Skinwalker Ranch, and that this being may be the demiurge of Gnostic belief systems. It's possible. I've covered the demiurge in a past broadcast, but it kind of confuses people, so we're going to go back over that this evening. We've got some interesting paranormal in the news and a little bit of cryptid corner this evening. Probably the biggest paranormal in the news this evening is Anna Paulina Luna, the congresswoman who is really heading up like all these different committees having to do with UAP disclosure and other big government secrets that they say will be disclosed. Well, she was on the Joe Rogan podcast this week and had some pretty shocking stuff to say. She admitted that she has been in a SCIF, which is a secured facility where upper top secret level type information is held. If you want to see that information, you have to show up to one of these buildings that are completely secure in order to view it. And that's what she did. And she says that she saw indisputable photographic and regular documentation to prove. And I said prove. She says she's very, very confident that these beings behind the UAP, the real UAPs, I'm not talking about the man-made attempts at reproducing their technology, but the real UAPs that they have in their possession appear to be interdimensional in nature. That's right, guys. You have one of the main Congress people in the whole government And she was on the biggest podcast in the world saying that she has inside information from a skiff that to her proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that what we are dealing with are interdimensional entities. So we are going to have to take her at her word on that. I don't think that for a minute she was trying to pull the skin over our eyes, the wool over our eyes. And she's been straightforward and very upfront about her desire for UAP disclosure her entire career. And it's quite possible that, she sees repercussions for saying the things that she said. I don't think she really cares. But News Nation is even running a story on it, and they have to say, GOP Rep. Anna Paulina Luna told Joe Rogan she has viewed evidence of interdimensional beings on Earth. Luna, who leads a task force for the declassification of federal secrets created by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, joined Rogan on his eponymous podcast that was released Wednesday. The Floridian told Rogan she met F-15 pilots who had likely encounters with UAPs while she was working as an airfield manager at Portland International Guard. While not viewing portals or UAPs herself, Luna said she had seen photographic evidence, historical evidence, and spoken to Air Force pilots who alleged the Air Force was covering up UAP sightings. Quote, "There's definitely something I can tell you with confidence that we don't know how to explain currently," Luna told Rogan. Luna added she believes there are interdimensional beings that, quote, "can operate through the time-space that we currently have." She also believes that the U.S. has reverse-engineered technology to replicate crafts by those who are not made by those who are not mankind. Quote, "Without getting into classified conversations, there have been incidences where I believe very credible people have reported that there have been movements outside of time and space," Luna said. Going on, she says, "Based on the photos I've seen, I'm very confident that there's things out there that have not been created by mankind." And that's running on News Nation. If you haven't seen the Rogan podcast, it's well worth seeing. If you don't know who Anna Paulina Luna is, you might want to make yourself familiar with her. She's probably the best advocate we have in the government, and she's out there fighting every day for us. So that's a good thing. Fox News this week is running a very interesting special, if you will, with their star field reporter, Abby Hornacek, and it's all about the Mothman. The Mothman is a very interesting topic for Fox News to cover. Why they would cover it to the degree that they're covering it and they literally go and talk to all of the surviving eyewitnesses who were there and saw it with their own eyes at the time. And, it's, I think, part of the overall UAP disclosure. And this is tonight's Cryptid Corner, is about the Mothman entity. So, in cryptozoology, you have three circles. You have Lazarus species. Those are species that went extinct, and somehow the life wave of our planet reintroduces them into our ecology again. They sort of resurrect themselves. The thylacine, or the Tasmanian tiger, as it's known, is one of these species. There has been irrefutable video evidence of a thylacine living in the here and now. That's out there if you want to take a look at that. And then you have the center circle, which are the woo animals. And then you have the third circle, which are emergent species like the South Texas chupacabra. The center circle, which encompasses the woo animals like Dogman, like Bigfoot, like Mothman. And you have to, in each case, with the woo animals, ask yourself a series of questions. Is this a viable breeding species of some kind, replicating itself within our biosphere in a biological fashion? Or is this, like the Dover demon, a one-off cryptozoological animal? In other words, was there only one of them? And if there's only one of them, we have to come to the grim conclusion that it was an artificial construction of some kind, not a breeding species. Jonathan Keel makes it clear in the book Mothman Prophecies, not the horse crap of a movie that they made out of the book, which didn't include any of the pertinent information about the UFO connection to Mothman. In fact, more UFOs were seen in Point Pleasant around the Mothman sightings than at any other time in history. And Keel himself had traveled to Point Pleasant because of the UFO activity, not because there were Mothman sightings. The Mothman sightings came as part of this UFO wave. He also held the belief that there are possibly, and this ties back into Anna Paulina Luna, entities here on the planet that are extra-dimensional in nature, that can see outside the confines of our space and our time, and can therefore see the larger picture of the event stream as it's taking place. And that's how and why it knew where John Keel would be before he even got there. You know, Jonathan Keel would often just hit the road on his way to Point Pleasant and would randomly select a motel to stay at for the night on his way down there from Washington, D.C., and he would go in to check into the motel, and there would be a message waiting for him. That's an entity that can see outside of space and time, and knew things that it shouldn't know. You know, Keel reported one time that he had interviewed a number of alien abductees, and he got a phone call from this Mothman entity, really going as Indrid Cold, which was a man that walked around the town asking very bizarre questions about Jonathan Keel, and he went by the name Indrid Cold. Well, Keel was told to show up to a field one time in the middle of the night to witness something that would be displayed for him. And what he saw were two of the alien abductees that he had worked with that didn't know each other appear. They met in that field. One of them handed the other one a weird cube of some kind, and she walked off into the woods with it. He later got a message to the, basically paraphrasing, see what I can do, see how I control people, this can happen to you. And he got a glimpse into this whole world of activity that's taking place that involves what appears to be an extra-dimensional entity of some kind. And here we have one of the premier congresswoman in the government, head of all of these different committees, saying, yep, I've seen evidence that there are, in fact, interdimensional creatures that are interacting with humanity. That all ties in tonight with our main topic, which is this whole idea that living at Skinwalker Ranch is the so-called demiurge. The demiurge was a false god, according to Gnostic belief, that sort of controlled all of the illusion of creation around us. that the creation we see around us is an illusion, an attempt to cover over the real creation by God. And they believed that this entity could take human form, something that was later voiced by the world-famous occultist Aleister Crowley, who said that it did appear to him in human form at one time. Fascinating. So, the Mothman appears to be connected intimately with the UFO activity that was taking place in Point Pleasant at that time. And it appears as though both the activity and the creature involved were interdimensional in nature. That's interesting because it's at Point Pleasant and in the Mothman enigma that we get our very first glimpses, really, of the Men in Black. In fact, Mary Heyer, who ran the town newspaper, had a couple of run-ins with Men in Black who attempted to intimidate her into not running certain stories. And the only known real photograph of a man in black was taken by her, and it's out there on the internet. And you can see what one of these guys looks like. He's about half a block down on the other side of the street, but she got a pretty decent photograph of him wearing his black suit, sunglasses, hat, you name it. He fit the bill perfectly. And so, you know, that's a crossway into the Men in Black enigma. Also, who are the Men in Black? What are the Men in Black? We don't know. That should be the subject of an upcoming show. There's a mountain of interesting information out there about it. Let's see here. Pulling up my supercomputer with all of the thousands of news streams on here. Wow, you even have the Huffington Post and the New York Post, the Daily Mail, the Hill, you name it, man. It's out there. It's all about Anna Paulina Luna and her claims about these interdimensional entities. So, really, the scenario with the UAP disclosure works out in a strange way, because now you're dealing with interdimensional entities who we were able somehow to acquire craft from another dimension. Think about that. You know, I listened to her interview and she mentioned it was like us traveling back in time and leaving an iPhone with a tribe of cavemen and asking them to replicate it. That's the technology advancement that you're talking about. How could cavemen go about replicating an iPhone? Because that was the task left to them. And a healthy amount of fear that if that actually fell into the right hands of our enemies and they were able to replicate it and weaponize it, that would be the end. That's the end of the struggle of control of the planet right there. Because if you got that technology, you just took the high seat on the hill. You are like Philip K. Dick's series, The Man in the High Castle, at that stage. And you can write your own ticket. If you have that kind of technology, you are undefeatable. So you can see why there are intelligence elements out there in the government who make that argument constantly to our politicians, who then keep their mouth shut. And this has been perpetuating itself for 80 years. On top of that, you have a very large group of highly religious individuals involved in the military and at the Pentagon and all around the UAP program, and every time that they are faced with this kind of evidence, they turn to superstition, like humans always have, and they start saying, that's the devil's work. So that's the battle we're fighting. You're fighting a bunch of people that show up to church every Sunday and have a belief system that doesn't include at all the possibility that we are victimized by an interdimensional species which had to be created by the same God. You know, it's interesting because Anna Paulina Luna says that she still has her religious views and all of that, and this somehow made peace with the idea of, you know, organized religion not having anything in its writing about, hey, look out for these interdimensional beings. And that's part of the ontological shock that might take place, but she seems to handle it well, so maybe others will too. But, and maybe they'll all just say, yeah, that's the devil. And we won't ever get real disclosure or anything like that. It's quite possible. You know, it's one of those battles that has many different fronts on it, and you're fighting all kinds of cross currents and riptides when it gets down to it. But the Webbot tells us that this secret is part of the nature of the universe, and the nature of the universe is a self-revealing nature, meaning that it will disclose itself to the masses sooner or later. The small group of people who deem themselves the guardians of human consciousness at this stage, by not allowing others to share in that knowledge, will be bypassed altogether at some point. And people will come in and have to accept the reality of these things. How many people do you know who are willing, really, in your life, to accept the reality of these things and to act accordingly, right? I mean, it's not, if it's not in your face every day, all day, like an electric bill, really, how much is it going to cause people to change their behavior? And that's the whole point. They don't want you to change your behavior. You know, there's the old adage about boiling a frog alive. You can take a frog, go down to your pond, sit there and wait for a big, juicy bullfrog, pick it up, take it home, and boil a pan of water. But when that water's good and boiling hot, take the frog and toss it in there. What you're going to see is the frog jump out of the water in response to the pain. But you can take that same frog and you can put it in a cool pan of water and set it on the stove and turn the burner on, and you can slowly boil it to death. That's the human species right now. So we need to awaken. We need to realize what's going on. And, you know, it shows like this that attempt to propagate the truth. I'm big on facts. I'm big on figures. I'm big on actually having a source for the information I'm relaying to you guys. There's far too much noise going on the internet with people discussing alternate timelines and parallel universes and the 20 and back program and stuff that literally has zero shred of evidence. Give me names, give me dates, give me facts, give me figures, give me sources. Just because you sit there and say something is true doesn't make it true. And all of the BS that's going on out there in the internet and various conferences, so-called disclosure conferences, talking about things that absolutely got created out of nowhere and propagating it like it's the truth. That's happening all over the place, so beware, guys. Tune into my show. You're going to get facts, figures, and things that you can look up for yourself, so you know I'm telling you the truth. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about this new piece of evidence that was dropped into my lap, and that has to do with the crystal caves of Mexico. What if I told you that there are quartz crystals in caves deep in Mexico that are so big they're the size of high-rise buildings? And what if I told you that something amazing was discovered living in those crystals? We'll get back to that right after our break.
I'm Sarah, and this is my story.
I'm Ellen, and this is my story.
One night, I was at a bar. I was having fun with my friends.
I
had one too many drinks.
I
got behind the wheel to go home.
I got a cab to go home.
All of a sudden, from out of nowhere, a squirrel ran across the road.
It
happened so quickly, I barely had time to react.
The cabbie barely had time to react.
I swerved.
The cab swerved.
I can't believe it. I hit a guy.
I cannot believe it. The cabbie just missed a guy.
I wish I took a cab.
Thank goodness I took a cab.
You have the choice to save a life. Don't drive buzzed. It's a decision you'll never regret. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Ancient times to modern days. Legends of creatures in sudden disarray. Hear them speak through frequencies. Alien connections.
Break it out, truth untold. Tune it in, cosmic mystery. Dark woods where legends breathe. Paranormal whispers, can you believe? Bigfoot strikes through the veils. Darkman howls in the midnight tale. From the static, revelations pour. Portals open, dimensions roar. the truth, no disguise. Cryptid shadows creeping near. Through the static, voices clear. Dark woods where legends breathe. Paranormal whispers. Can you believe? It's the Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio. Whoa. Wednesday nights, enjoy the show. It's how we spend our Wednesday nights. Yay, it's crank that dial and dim the show. It's how we spend our Wednesday nights.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, your own personal guide to the Twilight Zone. And, you know, I've got a voice for smell-o-vision and a face for milk cartons, and I'm here on the radio talking to you guys. So, let's see here. I'm going to pull up something for our video people. Can you see that?
No, but
No?
no. I was looking for, but hold on. Let me bring down the this real quick, and maybe we can see it in the chat. No, guess not. I tried.
Oh, never mind. I got you.
Yeah,
Hang on just a second.
we'll just do a share screen next time.
Oh, I got it. Hang on just a second. Here you go. Boom. How's
Here
that?
it comes. There it is. Oh my God! Wow, that's amazing, Jack.
Yeah. So, I got a picture up on the screen for you for the video feed out there, guys. But if you're just on the radio, what I have up is a picture of just a small portion of the Crystal Caves in Mexico. And I have to tell you, this is just a small deposit of quartz crystal as far as the planet is concerned. Our entire inner part of our planet is nothing but this quartz crystalline structure with quartz crystals as big as buildings. Think about that. The environment is so deadly that scientists can only expose themselves for 10 minutes at a time. The pressure, the humidity, and a very strange energy is emanating from the crystals themselves. And what if I told you that scientists have drilled into these quartz crystals and they have extracted a liquid from them? And what if I told you that that liquid was analyzed and it was found to be literally teeming with alien microbes? That's right, guys. It has been scientifically proven that an alien life form is living in the crystalline structure of our planet. Look it up for yourselves. And this ties into my entire theory that what we are seeing here is an alien intelligence. What those microbes are its essence. That this alien intelligence lives within the crystalline structure of the Earth, and it's a shape-shifting entity. It can change form at will. It can alter reality around us. It can do all of the things that the demiurge of so-called Gnostic belief could do. Is it possible they were right? Because in my theory here, guys, is the fact that you can look all around the world, and I've written a book called The Devil's Key that discusses all of this in great detail. Not that it matters. Nobody buys books anymore. Nobody reads books anymore. And any attempt to try to monetize paranormal information is an absolute bad bet. It cannot be done. I'm telling you that after 30 years of being in the paranormal world, it's an impossibility. And you should always take from the mysteries. Never allow the mysteries to take from you. I have seen many an individual take a powered nosedive with occult assistance. It turned, what ends up happening is interest into paranormal subject matter often causes obsession. Obsession takes over a person's life, and they wake up 3 decades later with nothing. It has stolen everything from them. Just don't be one of those people. So, but getting back to our conversation, my idea, my theory, my new exotic paranormal theory, and this is a major new piece of the puzzle that fell into my lap this week by way of William Shatner, actually. Captain Kirk dropped it in my lap. That's a weird world, isn't it? Can't make that stuff up. So I extracted this liquid. There are alien life forms living in the liquid. I wager those life forms are the essence of the demiurge. And I wager that there are quartz crystal deposits, very large quartz crystal deposits that are underneath Skinwalker Ranch at some level. And that this thing is able, through some combination of elements in the mesa, to come up and to basically make its residence there, to manifest itself there. Recently, if you've been watching Skinwalker Ranch, something unseen, an unseen entity went into their computer lab, logged off all the computers, erased a bunch of information, turned the cameras around, you name it. Just ransacked them. And this has been going on since Skinwalker Ranch has begun to be studied. Brandon Fugel just a few weeks ago admitted on a podcast that he is part of ongoing high-level Pentagon discussions concerning what appears to be an alien consciousness living in that landscape. I mentioned the fact that this thing can take form, take shape. It can literally become carnate. And what if I told you that Fugel admitted that they discovered on the ranch and have in their possession, as I previously mentioned, a real carcass of a dire wolf, a species that died out 130,000 years ago, a fleshy, bony, it was maggot-ridden at the time of its discovery. This was something that just died. It wasn't found in ice, wasn't found buried in the mesa. It was laying in the actual gulch of the ranch. What if I told you that there were intelligence agents on the ranch at one point, and this was written in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon by Dr. Colm Kelleher and George Knapp, and that their presence on the ranch caused a dogman manifestation to occur 1,000 miles away to one of the wives of one of the intelligence agents involved at the ranch. Would it be natural then for us to begin to ask the cryptozoological question, is it the source of all dogman sightings? And if not, why not? Could this crystal entity be taking the form of various paranormal phenomenon? I've even previously entertained the notion that this could be an imprisoned alien entity on this planet that is attempting to, socially engineer a surface species in such a way that it can make its escape. Think about that possibility. But really, what we need to begin to focus on is the idea that all of the various devil triangle areas around the world, there's 12 of them that were identified by Ivan T. Sanderson, the intelligence agent turned cryptozoologist. If you're not familiar with the work of Ivan T. Sanderson, please familiarize yourselves with his work. His work, as we are going along in the event stream, is proving to be more and more accurate. Often, as an investigator into private cases that I do, you always have to go back to the source. Think of every stream of information as a stream of water. It starts really clear and pure at the spring source, and as it makes its way down the river, it gets dirtier and muddier and less like its original source. So always go back to the earliest accounts if you can. Always go back to the information that was derived from a time before the internet, a time before cross-contamination began to occur between groups of people. Because now, like I was previously preaching on my soapbox, you have a bunch of people in the ufology arena, and it's crazy to me. These people just have the tens of thousands of followers, and they're just spewing crap. Absolute crap. Talking about a 20 and back program they have to Mars on a separate timeline, and there's these time machines, and by God, somebody somewhere said it, so it must be true. There's not one iota of real evidence for any of it. And I would wager that at its source is disinformation campaigns put out by our intelligence agencies on purpose in order to make the rest of us look like we're a bunch of nutcases and can't tell the difference between real, viable intelligence and something somebody said somewhere once on the internet, so it must be true. If you're listening to one of these paranormal sources and they don't say the source of where they're getting that information, I wouldn't pay them any attention. Rest assured, I will always give you the source of where I get my information, and you can find it yourselves and see how the pieces fit together. Maybe that's why they never invite me to their conferences, because after all, I'm not spewing a bunch of crap. So, where are we with all of this? Well, let's take it on premise that the scenario I'm presenting is real. Okay? There is an alien entity living in the crystalline structure of the planet. It appears to have abilities to literally change our perception of reality within a given space and time. This could help to explain all of the missing 411 cases, cases like the kid who saw his dead grandmother in the woods beckoning him, and when he came over to her, she ended up turning into something else altogether. There's cases like that out there. There are so many missing person cases, and all of this ties together really with the UFO phenomenon in quite a few interesting ways. In other words, how much of the UFO phenomenon is this entity pretending to be that phenomenon? And how much of it is real? That's a good question, too. Because when you begin to entertain the notion of a trickster spirit, which is something every indigenous people around the world believed in, then you have to entertain the notion that you've been tricked. You have to entertain the notion of a shape-shifting entity that can make you believe it's something that it's not. For what ends and purposes, only its alien intelligence would know. For what motivation, only its alien intelligence would know. But as I previously mentioned, there is a huge, not often talked about clue at Skinwalker Ranch. This was published quite a long time ago, and if you look long enough through various search engines, you should be able to find a picture of the actual screen capture from the video camera at Skinwalker Ranch that was positioned right on a computer. The computer was off. It was the middle of the night. All of a sudden, the screen begins to flicker, and slowly the screen begins to light up, and an image begins to appear, and it gets clearer and clearer and clearer, and all of a sudden, bam, there it is. And it's 2 words, and it says, "I live." Tell me that's not an entity trying to make communication with the people that are on the ranch. Not only that, let's plug in a very interesting quote that I found this week, deriving its origin from Nikola Tesla, who said, "We may never understand the growth of the crystal, but we can be assured that it is alive." That was Nikola Tesla, guys. So let's plug in the mystery of the crystal skulls, right? What are the odds that a group of indigenous people in South America came across this crystal entity, as I like to call it, began to communicate with it in a shamanic fashion, and it directed them on how to construct those skulls so that it could communicate with them better? What if I told you the mythology of the 12 crystal skulls, and when you bring them together, it creates this force field for the planet? That's all interesting stuff, and it all ties together into this idea that there is, in fact, a crystal entity. What if I told you that the inventor of Kirlian photography, the guy who could take pictures of people's auras, and they still do it today, took a group of people and put them in front of his camera one by one to get their aura photographed, and he put a big chunk of quartz crystal in each one of them's in their hand to hold, and each one held it completely still while the photograph was being taken. And in numerous photographs, he noticed what appeared to him to be a wispy little entity that would rise up out of the stone. As soon as the model would move their hand, the entity would be seen to dart back into the stone again. That's the crystal entity. I knew about it, and I wrote about it as long as 20 years ago in my book, American Sorcerer. But nobody reads books, so that's where that went. And so, does this set mankind up for a battle with the demiurge, right? Does this lead us down the pathway where we will eventually have to face and combat this super entity that's alive in the crystalline structure of our own planet? And how much of that, how much does that entity have to do with, and how much is it perhaps muddying the waters of overall UAP disclosure with what appear to be real other interdimensional entities making their way to our space and time? I have in my possession a memo from the Federal Bureau of Investigation by way of a FOIA request. It has been posted on the internet, so I'm sure you can find it. The memo clearly is from 1947. It was days after the Roswell incident, this internal memo was generated. In the memo, it states that they believed that these entities, these alien beings, were coming from an interdimensional planet, but not a planet of the way you and I think. But their planet on another dimension shares the same point in time and space. And when we detonated our first nuclear weapons, it damaged their world. There's something about nuclear technology that touches other dimensions. That's why our nuclear facilities, our nuclear ships, submarines, which I served on, our nuclear reactors of all kinds are constantly being buzzed over by these craft. And it's not like they're propelling themselves off of it. Who knows why they're so obsessed with it? Probably because they know that if there's another nuclear detonation of some kind, it's going to damage their other world. The FBI memo goes on to state that they have chosen to colonize this planet because theirs is damaged. And we did it. And that's why they feel like they have the right to do what they're doing. Now imagine an interdimensional species that doesn't quite have the DNA to make it on this dimension. What might a species like that do? Might it study the DNA of living, intelligent beings that are able to survive on this dimension? And might it begin to experiment with that DNA and its own DNA in an attempt to create a so-called soul container, as many abductees have been told, so that it can reside on this dimension? You see what I'm getting at? Anna Paulina Luna may have put the final piece of the puzzle together for us in one podcast. Because if she's to be believed, and if she's right, and they are interdimensional in nature, then the FBI memo is completely, totally verified and is probably true. And we can begin then to really unravel an entire ball of yarn here. So we have a scenario by which primates on this planet evolved to the point where we blew up a nuclear weapon. It damaged these aliens' planet on their plane of existence, which is shared by ours. They have a way of opening interdimensional doorways and traveling through them. They came to see the source of where that damage was, and now they are attempting to openly colonize this other planet. That's the scenario that's presenting itself to us. And if the abductees are to be believed, it has taken them 8 full generations of hybrids being bred, being experimented to the point where they can now introduce their hybrids into human society without them being detected at all. They look just like you and me, and if you saw a photograph of a group of alien hybrid beings, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But according to all abduction testimony in its totality, by way of various researchers everywhere, anyone from Bud Hopkins to Johnny Mack to the professor over at Temple University, they all will tell you that the abductees are coming back saying that these new hybrids look just like us, but they have a nasty little secret. And that little secret is that they are neurologically superior to other humans. In other words, they can telepathically control human thought, emotion, and action within a given distance. And that, my friends, would be the ultimate social engineering. So that's our rabbit hole for tonight, guys. Join me next week, and we will explore another strange paranormal rabbit hole. Stay tuned for the beautiful, talented, genius Nancy Planeta will be taking you on a tour of the Vixen's Vault coming up. I'll see you next week.